As part of its most recent argument against Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard King, which largely focuses on the Call of Duty IP, Sony refers to the next generation of PlayStation, the PS6. Many may consider it too early to talk about the PlayStation 6 since the PS5 is barely 2 years old, but the fact of the matter is companies like Sony have to hold the long view, too. Referring to Microsoft's offer to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation consoles through 2027, though Microsoft has later said it would be happy to make a deal with PlayStation that keeps it happy. Just not forever, Sony claims that by the launch of the next-gen PlayStation console, with the release window redacted, it would have lost Call of Duty and its competitiveness in the area would be severely degraded. It should be noted that, generally speaking, a console life period is about 7 years. This holds largely true with the PS3, PS4, PS5, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X, although many are speculating that this current console generation will last longer than that period. This is because of the impact of the pandemic on the industry and how this generation has been slower to putting out games that make the most of its hardware. For example, many consider Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart to be the only real, next-gen game so far. Over the last 3 decades, Sony's PlayStation brand has become one of the most recognizable in the world, and it has cemented itself as the market-leading video game platform. The problems with the console's production were compounded by many video game developers delaying titles due to working conditions dramatically changing during the pandemic. Home working was not the ideal option for many developers, and this resulted in delays for big titles, sometimes more than once. Even now, 2 years later, the PS5 is still feeling the effects of these delays. Many new games are still being released on both the PS4 and PS5, indicating that Sony is not yet ready to fully commit to its latest console. From a business perspective, this does make a lot of sense, especially considering the PS4 is one of the best-selling video game consoles of all time and has a huge audience. It also means that exclusive titles such as Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart and Returnal are extremely scarce. Releasing a title on both consoles will ultimately hold it back, not allowing developers to fully harness the power of current-gen hardware. Previous generations since Sony's PS3 have operated on a 7-year cycle. The PS3's 2006 launch was followed by a 2013 debut for the PS4, before the PS5 was released globally in 2020. A prospective release window of 2028 gives Sony's PS5 an extra year of life, and indicates that Sony is fully aware that this extra time is needed, given what has happened so far. A further 5 years of focused support from Sony should allow the PlayStation 5 to build up a strong catalog of exclusives that could rival any of its predecessors. As developers are learning more about the hardware's potential, games should really start to push it to its absolute limits, ensuring players get to experience some of the most technologically advanced games ever made in the coming years. While home consoles are now more powerful than ever before, arguably, their improvements are slightly more subtle than they used to be. At the time, the contrast between Nintendo's SNES and the N64 was so stark it was almost unbelievable. And the release of the PS2 ensured titles such as Tekken 3 and Gran Turismo 3 very quickly made its predecessors' games look almost prehistoric, and God of War 1 and 2 displayed a powerhouse of a showcase for the PS2. For the current generation, the most significant improvements aside from visual upgrades and features like ray tracing are now things such as a huge decrease in load times and immersive elements such as haptic feedback and 3D audio. PS5 becomes more readily available, more games should start to shift to the current gen, slowly but surely leaving the PS4 behind as the PS6 starts to loom on the horizon. Time is still on the PS5 side at the moment. We already know that the planning of a next-generation hardware starts at the launch of the current hardware, and there is a patent that indicates the PlayStation 6 could feature a dual GPU. There's a long way to go before proper discussions about a potential PS6 should start, which gives it ample time to build on the technological advancements made so far, and amass an arsenal of must-have exclusive titles. Replicating anything close to the unparalleled success of the PlayStation 2 and PS4 consoles would help the PS5 to ensure this current generation is a significant and memorable one. Before preparing gamers for the inevitable launch of the PS6, when the cycle starts all over again. The technology company mostly known for its graphics cards, Nvidia, has applied for a patent for a new type of holographic VR display. The patent application seems to involve a display that is placed on a head-mounted gear and would work as a virtual reality headset. Nvidia's intentions are not on display in the patent application, and it is only a technical explanation of the potential technology, but this could prove to be one of the first gaming-focused holographic VR headsets on the market. Nvidia is a conglomerate working in software development and hardware manufacturing. While it became known as a graphics card manufacturer in the 1990s, Nvidia has since grown to produce myriad of semiconductor applications, software solutions, and consumer goods. In the gaming field, in addition to its GeForce graphics cards, Nvidia offers the likes of Shield gaming devices and game streaming platform GeForce Now. The patent application by Nvidia is first and foremost described as a holographic virtual reality display. While this doesn't distinguish immediately that it is indeed designed for use in headsets, the background of the technology and the detailed description reveal that it is intended to be placeable on head-mounted displays. Of course, the most popular head-mounted displays in the consumer space are traditional VR devices, like the gaming-oriented Meta Quest and PSVR headsets. This isn't the first holographic headset on the market. In fact, Microsoft's HoloLens project had worked on holographic head-mounted displays for years. However, those aren't, strictly speaking, VR headsets. Microsoft's HoloLens uses what is called augmented reality to project images on top of regular field of vision. Nvidia doesn't seem to be aiming to reproduce Microsoft's product, although it does mention that the technology could be used in AR and mixed reality applications. Nvidia's descriptions of the device specifically call the device a virtual reality display, which suggests that this is likely aimed for more than adding content on top of the user's view. This also suggests that there might be more gaming-related holographic purposes. Games are mentioned as possible form of entertainment consumed on the device, game controllers as an input device, and game consoles as a source of the displayed image. Unfortunately, the patent images don't give any indication of the products the technology is intended to be used in, as per usual. As with all patents, this doesn't mean that Nvidia necessarily has a product on its development pipeline using the technology at this point. The company could simply be trying to position itself better as virtual reality games are becoming more popular. However, it definitely shows the company is working on developing a technology to make that happen. Speaking of VR headsets, as part of its 2022 Meta Connect conference, Meta has unveiled its Meta Quest Pro headset with a price point that may come as a shock to purchasers of Meta's previous headsets. The Meta Quest Pro serves as Meta's first dedicated attempt at capturing a portion of the growing commercial market for virtual and mixed reality in addition to its usual consumer market of gamers. The Meta Quest Pro is Meta's first headset since the release of the Oculus Quest 2 in October of 2020 and the first to be released under the Meta branding. The Quest 2 followed the success of the original Oculus Quest, and it became a popular option for some gamers to connect with friends and family when unable to travel during the global pandemic. The announcement of the Quest Pro comes ahead of the rumored release of Apple's VR headset, which is expected to come out sometime in 2023. Meta's new Quest Pro, previously known as Project Cambria, is the company's first attempt at creating a device designed for both VR and mixed reality. Quest Pro features pancake lenses that significantly reduce the size of the headset and increase the pixel density, making the headset feel lighter and providing crisper visuals. Unlike the previous versions of the Quest, which were designed primarily for consumers and sold for around the price of a traditional gaming console, the Quest Pro is designed primarily for business use and carries a whopping $1,499.99 price tag before including the cost of accessories. Although the press release for the Quest Pro mentions its ability to play games like previous Quest headsets, there were no announcements made about whether upcoming titles like Among Us VR will be coming to the new headset. While the marketing for the Quest Pro makes it clear that the headset is primarily designed for business users, some of the new features are likely to make gamers excited as well. Meta showed off new avatars designed to take advantage of the eye and face tracking included in the new headset, which could lead to more realistic interactions when playing with friends in VR due to being able to see other players' facial expressions. The controllers for the Quest Pro will also feature upgraded haptics similar to the system in Sony's PSVR 2 controllers, which should further increase immersion and will be available as a standalone purchase for Quest 2 owners. With PSVR 2 just around the corner and aimed solely at those looking to play games in VR, Meta may have trouble convincing gamers to pay $1.500 for a device that doesn't seem to offer many gaming-focused upgrades over its predecessor. And the PSVR 2 is much more cheaper with better specs. Meta has acquired multiple developers for its MetaQuest VR system, some of which will have fans excited for what's to come based on their prior games. This acquisition shows that the MetaQuest is here to stay in the VR space, even with the highly anticipated PlayStation VR 2 just around the corner. According to a recent blog post, Meta has acquired the Resident Evil 4 VR developer Armature Studio, as well as Camouflage, the developer of Iron Man VR, and Twisted Pixel. Twisted Pixel was previously owned by Microsoft and known for Xbox games such as The Gunstringer. The blog post stated that the developers will be working on ambitious and forward-thinking games, although information was not revealed on what exactly this would entail. And for what Meta VR system, as Meta declared that it would be a while before it could reveal what specifically these developers will be working on. It is a safe bet that whatever games will be in development, they will be for the upcoming Meta Quest 3 and Meta Quest Pro, especially given the extended period of time before Meta can reveal more information on the acquisition. Many consider Resident Evil 4 to be one of the most influential video games of all time. And its VR counterpart developed by the recently acquired Armature Studio was well received despite missing content at launch. Earlier this year, a Resident Evil 4 VR update was released that added this missing content to the game, such as Mercenaries, Big Head Mode, and the option to obtain the Chicago typewriter. The recent acquisition of these studios does beg the question on whether the possibility still exists for these VR games, such as Iron Man VR and Resident Evil 4 VR, to be ported to PSVR 2. Since the upcoming PlayStation VR system will not be backwards compatible with its first iteration, and a PS5 will be required to use it, the PSVR 2 needs impressive games on its roster in order to compete. With the hardware and games that Meta has on the horizon, thanks to the recent acquisitions, PlayStation is bound to have some competition in the VR entertainment market. According to information from Meta's quarterly earnings report, a new MetaQuest virtual reality headset appears to be on its way in 2023. This announcement comes merely a day after Meta released the Quest Pro on October 26. However, while the Quest Pro is a mixed reality system targeted toward businesses and enthusiasts, the new device is a consumer-grade VR headset like the Oculus Quest and Oculus Quest 2. Facebook parent company Meta acquired VR headset company Oculus in 2014. The company broke open the commercial VR market with the Oculus Rift in 2016 before releasing the standalone Oculus Quest in 2018 and Oculus Quest 2 in 2020. Meta reorganized Oculus into its virtual reality branch Reality Labs the same year. Meta released its quarterly earnings report on October 26. It revealed that the company expected increased costs from its Reality Labs subsidiary due to the upcoming launch of its newest consumer Quest headset next year. However, the report did not explicitly refer to the new device as the Meta Quest 3. Neither did it explicitly say whether it would be a full VR headset or a consumer version of the Quest Pro, as a previous Oculus Quest 3 leak seemed to indicate. However, its description as a next-generation Quest could point to the new device being full VR rather than a mixed reality system like the Meta Quest Pro. Still, fans don't know much about the upcoming headset, and Meta has yet to announce the Meta Quest 3 officially. However, Meta chairman and CEO Mark Zuckerberg referred to the device by name during an interview with Stratocaire published on October 12. This news is also consistent with Meta's plans to release 4 new headsets by 2024. This plan includes 2 Oculus gaming headsets. The first will reportedly be a high-end gaming headset released in 2023, with a budget alternative launching in 2024. It's unclear how different the 2 devices will be upon release or how much they will cost. However, Zuckerberg indicated that the Meta Quest 3 would run in the $300, $400, or $500 range but couldn't give a specific price. Still, this may provide VR users a rough idea of how much they can expect to spend when the headsets release over the next 2 years. Many things have pointed to Valve silently working on a new VR headset for quite some time now, and the latest patent that's been awarded to the company is for a VR controller, underlining these theories. The company behind Steam has already had a number of successful hardware projects, the most notable being the Valve Index and Steam Deck, which serve the VR and handheld PC gaming niches respectively. The notion that Valve would continue working on furthering the virtual reality scene isn't very surprising on its own. After all, the latest Half-Life game was a widely acclaimed VR exclusive, and the company has shown a penchant for looking forward and leveraging cutting-edge technology to deliver superior products. Its new patent, then, fits into this existing pattern of production. Valve's patent describes an electronic controller with a linear hand strap adjuster, with the listing focusing primarily on the specifics of the featured strap design. The included drawing shows the whole device and may be the first time a new Valve controller has been seen so far. Most notably, the design includes a ring of lights mounted to the controller that would be used for tracking purposes and which immediately calls to mind the existing Oculus controllers. Nothing mentioned in the patent implies that it has anything to do with the rumored Valve Deckard VR headset, but it's probable that the two projects are related. It seems likely that the success of Steam Deck emboldened Valve when it comes to its hardware projects. While the company had a few hardware releases in the past, such as the Steam controller, none of them were nearly as successful as the Deck itself. In the case of Valve Index, for example, the issue was likely the fact that the full package costs roughly $1,000, making it prohibitively expensive for the majority of casual VR gamers. While its hardware divisions have been making strides, it's also worth pointing out that Valve apparently has multiple games in development too. It's not currently known whether any of these might be major AAA-tier projects such as Half-Life Alyx, but it does seem all but certain that the company will bank on its VR investments down the line. More news about all these games should be coming relatively soon if Valve aims to release them in the near future, but only time will tell how it all might pan out. Valve's core business is also doing remarkably well, of course. Steam hit a new concurrent user record earlier this year, making it obvious that the biggest and most popular PC gaming storefront is doing better than ever before. This, too, is bound to be a part of the reason why the company will continue working on dedicated hardware devices in the future. Speaking of VR, After the Fall has been confirmed as one of the launch titles for PlayStation VR 2 alongside titles like Horizon Call of the Mountain and Resident Evil Village. The horror shooter that was originally launched for early access a year ago for Steam, Oculus, and PlayStation VR is coming to PlayStation VR 2 in new higher-definition glory. The PS VR 2 version includes new content, better graphics, and improved controls. After the Fall is a cooperative survival action shooter that is set in a post-apocalyptic alternate universe version of Los Angeles. The world has been taken over by zombies and other monsters known as Snowbreed after an ice age began in the 1980s. The four-player team has to rid the Earth of anything that comes before them while harvesting materials from the Snowbreed, collecting supplies, and trying to survive the cold and treacherous environments. Now Vertigo Games, the developer of After the Fall, has released a new trailer for the upcoming version of the game. After the Fall Complete Edition is an improved version of last year's game that is heading to PlayStation VR 2. It is, in fact, one of the VR platform's launch titles. This means that it will be hitting the markets simultaneously with the PlayStation VR 2 launch on February 22, 2023. As one can imagine, Vertigo Games has made some important enhancements to the gameplay and graphics to meet the standards of the next-generation VR platform. The revisions include better resolution and graphics, increased field of view, and new haptic feedback. The resolution has been up to 4K with support for high dynamic range, or HDR, and the field of view is wider thanks to PlayStation VR 2's new 110-degree lenses. Last but not least, Vertigo Games has added real haptic feedback to give players a more immersive experience with PlayStation VR 2's new controllers. After the Fall Complete Edition will also feature new content. New locations, hospital and subway have been added to the game with even more monsters to slay. There will be two versions of the After the Fall for PS VR 2, a regular Complete Edition as well as a Deluxe Edition with an exclusive skin. Pricing for either version is yet to be confirmed, but it can be added to the wishlist in PlayStation Store. While Supermassive Games may have specialized in producing narrative-focused games like Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology, the studio does have a few other tricks up its sleeve. Some of which are coming into the limelight with the upcoming Swichback VR, which now has an official launch date. a spiritual successor to Until Dawn: Rush of Blood. This rail shooter promises a way for players to take revenge upon some of the monstrosities shown in the previous entries in the Dark Pictures anthology. Specifically, the Dark Pictures has always been about characters meeting horrors that seem far beyond their ability to deal with. More often than not, combat is not a major gameplay element, with only an occasional direct confrontation. Swichback VR, however, gives players guns with virtually infinite ammo and lets them go ham. Swichback VR was announced on November 2nd, but Supermassive Games just revealed that the Dark Pictures spin-off will launch alongside the long-awaited PlayStation VR 2 headset on February 22, 2023. This means that the Dark Pictures Swichback VR has been added to PSVR 2's list of launch day titles, and it's unlikely that the next mainline game in the Dark Pictures anthology, Directive 8020, will release beforehand. Supermassive also updated the game's PlayStation Store listing, revealing the Inferno Pack DLC that contains new weapons and carts that will be available as a bonus with all pre-orders. Whereas other Dark Pictures games force players to make difficult choices, Swichback VR is going to be far more binary in that respect. Being a VR-driven roller coaster ride, Swichback VR tasks players with taking down horrors that they may have encountered as part of the Dark Pictures Anthology Season 1 content. More specifically, this refers to the stories of Man of Medan, Little Hope, House of Ashes, and the most recent The Devil in Me, with their respective monsters and killers seemingly making appearances in Swichback. It may surprise some PlayStation fans that PSVR 2 is rather expensive, but Swichback VR's feature lists may help explain why this is the case. Specifically, Supermassive appears to have made good use of the headset's eye-tracking technology to spawn enemies while the players are blinking. Its haptic feedback and adaptive triggers, on the other hand, suggest that this may end up being one of the most immersive rail shooters yet, as they'll accurately transfer the game's bumps and drops to the player. Interested parties can pre-order a PSVR 2 right now, and as expensive as it may be, everything suggests that it's going to be a big deal. It comes with a comprehensive feature set and could be the next big step for mainstream VR, especially if games such as Swichback VR leverage them in just the right way. The developer of the Callisto protocol, Striking Distance Studios, has announced that there is 6 months worth of content planned for the horror title, detailing some of the stuff that players can expect to see later on, as well as its tentative release schedule. With both free and paid content on the way, fans of the newly released spiritual follow-up to Dead Space seemingly have much to look forward to. The Callisto protocol has been released on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox platforms, and though the game does appear to have some growing pains related to performance, that Striking Distance Studios has kept true to its pedigree, as it still has some of the developers who worked on the original Dead Space back in the day. Those who find themselves particularly enamored by the universe of Callisto Protocol will likely be thrilled with extra content coming in the future. Striking Distance Studios has already gone on record saying that Callisto Protocol isn't holding back Season Pass content. And the developer has now underlined this notion by revealing what's coming as part of its post-launch support plan. Namely, all players will receive the game's most difficult mode, Hardcore, as well as New Game Plus for free on February 7, 2023. Season Pass holders will, on the other hand, also get their first skin collection on this day. This update will receive 2 cosmetic-focused follow-ups over the course of 2023, with actual story-based content slated for summer 2023, specifically. It's unclear where the Callisto Protocol Season Pass death animations come into the picture, as the scheduling does not highlight them in any way, shape, or form. It's likely, though, that each of the 3 upcoming cosmetics bundles will feature some number of death animations as part of the deal. It is curious, of course, that there's such substantial focus on Callisto's cosmetics since the game is a dedicated single-player experience. Headed by Glenn Schofield of Dead Space fame, Callisto delivers a relatively familiar sci-fi horror experience with a few notable tweaks in how its combat and progression function. And though the story itself doesn't seem to necessarily tread new ground, reviewers have praised great acting and astonishing visuals as some of its technical highlights. It may be worth pointing out, however, that the game seems to be suffering from performance issues on PC, even though the Callisto Protocol's minimum system requirements weren't alarming on their own. With such a comprehensive post-launch content plan in tow, however, it seems all but certain that fixes will be dropping in soon, as well. Speaking of post-launch content, Sonic Frontiers has announced its downloadable content roadmap for next year. Shortly after the game launched, Sega released a Monster Hunter collaboration DLC pack consisting of 2 new outfits for Sonic as well as a small barbecue split minigame. Not long after the pack was launched, the company made it clear to players that this was only the beginning, and that multiple free updates would be coming to the game soon. Now fans have a clearer image of what's coming next, and there are plenty of things to be excited about. Sonic Frontiers players can look forward to features they had been requesting making it into the game, such as a sound text, jukebox, and photo mode. These will be added as part of the game's first DLC update, with other features such as new challenge modes. With pictures implying that this might mean new cyberspace stages and even a boss rush mode might be coming to Frontiers as well. The biggest thing that should excite fans is that the third update is slated to add new playable characters and new story content. From the image used on the roadmap, there's an implication that Tails, Knuckles, and Amy will be made playable as part of this update, when they haven't been playable in years. The use of Sage also seems to say that fans can expect to play as her once the update launches as well. Official Sonic social media pages have also clarified that all of these updates will be free to all players. Players also have a good idea as to when they can expect these updates, as the slated content for the second update includes features meant to celebrate Sonic's birthday. While there's no telling what these features in particular could be, the date of when this feature goes live is easy to figure out. Sonic's birthday is June 23rd, the day that the original Sonic the Hedgehog game released in the United States. This means that this update will most definitely come out either on, or around that date. As a result, it could be easily said that fans can expect more Sonic Frontiers content possibly all the way into late next year. It seems that these updates are meant to come out in increments, so players shouldn't expect to put this game down for quite a while yet. That being said, some fans could argue that some of this content could have been added to the main game, such as the extra cyberspace stages or the jukebox sound test. However, other parts, such as the additional playable characters or even the boss rush mode, make sense as updates, as Sonic Team most likely wanted the story to be experienced first. Either way, Sonic Frontiers seems to be far from over, and fans have a right to be excited. Cyberpunk 2077 will reportedly receive a Game of the Year edition at some point down the line. Cyberpunk 2077 originally released in 2020 after a string of delays, but it was widely criticized at launch. The console versions of Cyberpunk 2077 were plagued with serious, game-breaking performance issues that were severe enough that Sony removed the game from the PlayStation Store entirely, and CD Projekt Red offered refunds. In the months and years after Cyberpunk 2077's disastrous launch, CD Projekt Red worked hard to right the ship, releasing multiple updates that improved the game's performance and in some cases, even added new content. These improvements, combined with renewed interest in the game after the success of the Cyberpunk Edge Runners anime, has seen public opinion on Cyberpunk 2077 do a complete 180, with many now hailing it as yet another great game from the Polish game studio. Now it seems that CD Projekt Red may even be gearing up to release a Game of the Year edition for Cyberpunk 2077, according to a report by Insider Gaming. According to Insider Gaming, CD Projekt Red CEO Adam Kasicinski said during an investor meeting that Cyberpunk 2077 getting a Game of the Year edition would be the natural order of things. CD Projekt Red has a long history of re-releasing its games with GOTY or enhanced editions after their initial launch, and did so with all 3 Witcher games. So some may not be surprised to learn that Cyberpunk 2077 is apparently getting a similar treatment. Then again, Cyberpunk 2077's disastrous launch may make some fans raise their eyebrows about CD Projekt Red potentially releasing a Game of the Year edition of the game. While Cyberpunk 2077 won plenty of awards pre-release, it did not enjoy that same kind of success after it was actually out. And while public perception of the game has turned around considerably, giving it Game of the Year recognition when it was in a broken state the year it released may not sit well with some fans. Of course, the Game of the Year moniker has been applied to various games that didn't win Game of the Year awards, so it's really nothing more than a marketing ploy. If CD Projekt Red moves forward with plans to release a Game of the Year edition of Cyberpunk 2077, one has to imagine that it would include all the DLC that's previously been released for the game baked in, as well as access to the Phantom Liberty expansion that's currently due for release at some point next year. Pyotr Niliboix, the CFO at CD Projekt Red, said during a recent financial call that the company is looking to speed up the development of Project Orion, which is the codename for the sequel of Cyberpunk 2077 after the release of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. To add more clarity, the CEO Adam Kaczynski stated that they have not yet begun pre-production of Project Orion and that it's slated to enter the research phase in 2023. Adam also mentioned that the research will be undertaken by a limited team in order to allow other members to join the Witcher 4 project. According to this news, the sequel of Cyberpunk 2077 is likely years away. However, the silver lining is that there is still plenty of Cyberpunk 2077 content to look forward to in the nearer future. Cyberpunk fans can look forward to the release of the Phantom Liberty DLC in 2023, which will see the return of Johnny Silverhand. Silverhand will join forces with V once again for another exciting adventure in Night City. Epic Games is releasing Unreal Engine 5.1 as an update to the game engine. The new update is aimed at making Unreal Engine 5 easier and faster for 3D content creation. The company has added a range of stress-tested new features and improvements in 5.1 make Unreal more robust, efficient, and versatile for creators across all industries. Epic Games said that over half of all announced next-gen games are being created with Unreal Engine. And it said developers can now take advantage of updates to the Lumen Dynamic Global Illumination and Reflection system. This is important stuff if you're a game developer. It has also made updates to the Nanite Virtualized Micropolygon Geometry system and virtual shadow maps that lay the groundwork for games and experiences running at 60 frames per second on next-gen consoles and capable PCs. These improvements will enable fast-paced competition and detailed simulations without latency, Epic said. Additionally, Nanite has also added a programmable rasterizer to allow for material-driven animations and deformations via world position offset, as well as opacity masks. This development paves the way for artists to use Nanite to program specific objects' behavior, for example Nanite-based foliage with leaves blowing in the wind. UE 5.1 also adds several features to improve efficiency for developers of games and other large-scale interactive projects, helping teams be more productive. For instance, virtual assets decouple the metadata from the object data, enabling developers to sync only what they need from source control systems such as Perforce, resulting in smaller workspaces and faster syncs for developers who don't need access to the full object data, Epic said. The new Automated Pipeline State Object, PSO, caching for DX12 simplifies the process needed to prepare a game for shipping in the DirectX 12 API. And lastly, on-demand shader compilation compiles only the shaders needed to render what is seen on screen while working in the Unreal Editor, which can result in significant time savings and increased interactivity. For developers building massive open worlds, this release also delivers additional functionality and improved workflows. World Partition now supports large world coordinates, enabling the creation of massive open worlds without loss of precision. Users can also enjoy accelerated source control workflows with World Partition, thanks to an improved user experience around managing, filtering, searching, and viewing files and change lists. In addition, new HLOD, hierarchical level of detail, support for water rendering and streaming enables users to create large water bodies in open worlds with better performance and a smaller memory footprint. Unreal Engine has now been used on over 425 film and TV productions, and is integrated into over 300 virtual production stages worldwide. With improvements in Unreal Engine 5.1 specifically tailored to virtual production workflows, technicians and artists now have multiple benefits, including a dedicated in-camera VFX editor, improved light card system, improved remote control APIs, expanded color correction tools, initial lumen support for N-display, and more. First, LED stage operators can now take advantage of a new dedicated in-camera VFX, ICVFX, editor that supports a range of virtual production workflows. This largely eliminates the need for stage operators to hunt through the outliner for specific objects and controls. UE 5.1 also adds UI, UX, and performance improvements for the remote control APIs, enabling users to construct powerful custom browser-based remote controls more quickly and easily. The ICVFX editor also hosts an interface to an improved light card system that displays as a preview of the N-display wall. As well as making it intuitive and efficient to create, move, and edit light cards and save templates, the new light cards can retain their shape on the wall, eliminating distortion. Also new in the ICVFX editor are color correction windows, CCWs, that enable color adjustments to be applied exclusively to anything behind them, similar to power windows in color grading. Applications, together with the ability to apply color corrections per actor, which reduces the need for complex masking. In Unreal Engine 5.1, the new Media Plate Actor enables OpenEXR support, enabling users to simply drag and drop footage from the content browser. In addition, users can now play back mip-mapped and tiled uncompressed EXRs both in-engine and with N-Display with the appropriate SSD RAID. And now have the ability to convert EXRs to the correct format for optimum playback. Furthermore, Unreal Engine's virtual camera system has been overhauled with a new underlying framework that utilizes Epic's Pixel streaming technology for improved responsiveness and reliability. And an updated UI with a modern camera-focused design that will be more familiar to camera operators. Users also now have the ability to connect hardware devices, and will be able to customize the UI in the future. Lumen, Unreal Engine's fully dynamic global illumination and reflection system, now offers initial support for N-Display in 5.1, provided the number of lights is modest, about 5 to 7 lights total, depending on graphics card. With Lumen, indirect lighting adapts on the fly with changes to the sun's angle, lights, or position bounce cards, for example. Previously, these changes would have required a baking step that could pause production, interrupting the creative flow. UE 5.1 also adds improvements to GPU light mass, including support for sky atmosphere, stationary sky lights, light features such as IES profiles and rect light textures, and improved quality and performance across the board. Unreal Engine usage in animation has grown exponentially, from 15 productions between 2015 and 2019 to over 160 productions from 2020 to 2022. For professionals working with animated content, particularly characters, Unreal Engine 5.1 offers several notable advancements to the engine's built-in animation and rigging tools, as well as Sequencer. Now in beta, the machine learning, ML, deformer generates high-fidelity approximations of nonlinear deformers, complex proprietary rigs, or any arbitrary deformation by using a custom Maya plugin to train a machine learning model, which in turn runs in real time in Unreal Engine. This enables users to simulate film-quality deformations, such as flexing muscles, bulging veins, and sliding skin. Other character deformation improvements include enhancements to the Deformer graph editor for easier graph creation and editing. Also, the control rig continues to expand toward fully procedural rigging, increasing the impact and scalability of rigging teams. Updates to the core framework include a new construction event that lets users generate rig hierarchies via a graph, and custom user events for creating and triggering rig events such as snap FK to IK. With these updates, artists can create a single control rig asset that can build itself to fit characters that may have different skeletal proportions and properties. For example, the same control rig can adapt itself to a 3-fingered monster or a 5-fingered human without any changes to the rig asset. Unreal Engine 5.1 also adds support for constraints in Sequencer, the engine's multi-track nonlinear animation editor, including position, rotation, and look-at. Users can leverage these to quickly and easily create and animate relationships between any control rig or actors, for example, making a camera always follow a character, keeping a character's hands on a steering wheel, animating a clown juggling balls, or constraining a cowboy's hips so that the character sits naturally in the saddle as the horse moves, while his hands hold the reins. Sequencer also sees additional functionality exposed through Blueprint and Python scripting, and a refactored UI/UX for increased stability and extensibility, and to improve animation authoring and editing workflows. Finally, enhancements to geometry tools include new functions for geometry scripting, UV editor improvements to handle more complex assets, and additional mesh editing and creation tools. Producing professional interactive sound is now faster and easier, so sound designers can focus more of their time on the key areas that matter the most in a project. Metasounds updates include additional node types, together with support for various multi-channel output formats, and the new ability to show feedback on real-time node connections. They've also introduced Soundscape, a plugin for procedural ambient sound generation. In this release, a number of artificial intelligence, AI, tools introduced in UE 5.0 move out of experimental status, smart objects and state tree to production ready, and mass entity to beta. Mass entity is a gameplay-focused framework for data-oriented calculations that enables you to efficiently populate large-scale worlds and create crowds with tens of thousands of believable AI agents. This release delivers UX improvements, CPU performance gains, and memory usage optimizations. In addition, the mass entity processors are now automatically multi-threaded. Smart objects are objects placed in a level that AI agents and players can interact with. These objects contain all the information needed for those interactions. In this release, smart objects have received general stability and workflow improvements that make it more convenient to set up smart object definitions. State tree is a general-purpose hierarchical state machine that combines the selectors from behavior trees with states and transitions from state machines, enabling you to create highly performant logic that stays flexible and organized. This release includes improved actor and blueprint-centric workflows, increased flexibility and modularity, and memory optimizations. These are just some of the important new features and enhancements in Unreal Engine 5.1. If you want a more in-depth explanation, you can check out the official press release from the Unreal Engine website. With the launch of Fortnite's fourth chapter, Epic Games reveals that the game is using some of the latest features introduced in Unreal Engine 5.1. This free-to-play title has added rounds of seasonal content ever since its launch, separated by both chapters and seasons. Fortnite Chapter 4 recently launched, complete with a new trailer showing off some of the game's upcoming collaborations with properties such as My Hero Academia, Doom, and The Witcher. Unreal Engine 5 is the latest version of Epic Games' proprietary creation tool, which became available for game developers to use earlier this year. This engine is touted to be a big step up in visual fidelity, especially for big game worlds. Fortnite itself switched over to Unreal Engine 5 last year, which was introduced during the third chapter. Shortly after the Chapter 4 trailer dropped, Epic Games posted on its blog about how Fortnite benefited from the technical features introduced in Unreal Engine 5.1. The first of these is in the visual upgrades from Unreal Engine 5, in the forms of Lumen, Nanite, Virtual Shadow Maps, and Temporal Super Resolution. These all help provide both high-quality visuals without compromising the frame rate. For example, Lumen reflections are high-quality ray-traced reflections that can be spotted on surfaces like water, or interior spaces having bounce lighting. Some of these qualities can be seen in some of the images included in the blog post, which showcase various Fortnite maps using these features. With these new Unreal Engine 5 features in Fortnite, the video settings will also be changed for PC users. Many of them related to the performance and specific settings related to the aforementioned specific features. The blog post notes that DLSS in the PC version of Fortnite will be disabled as Epic Games ensures it works alongside Unreal Engine 5.1's features. For players on PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series users, for these visual upgrades to be seen, the 120 FPS mode setting must be turned off. With these visual upgrades, however, Epic Games notes that there will be changes coming to the legacy support on PC. Specifically, Fortnite won't be supported on Windows 7 or 8 in the future, with Windows 10 being required to play Chapter 4 Season 2 from here on. According to the blog post, since Fortnite is evolving with its technology, there are bound to be security risks as well as modern features that aren't being implemented when working on these legacy systems. And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then, from SMPV, it's goodbye. In this release,